Release your anger. It's the only way to defeat me.
In light of ditching Star Wars the Republic, I couldn't leave without at least putting some sort of appreciation for the greatest piece of writing the game has to offer that I've experienced. And what is that, you might wonder? Out of the 8 classes, origin stories, and the expansion in swtor, the Sith Warrior is without a doubt the most potent and complete story of them all. I don't really think there's much of a competition here in terms of the standard and the length that the Sith Warrior runs through versus the other classes. Now, some might prefer the Imperial Agent, and honestly, I don't have any issue with that. I do agree that's another class that excels in quality. I would put that right behind the Warrior, but I would strongly, for the number 1 spot, I go with the Sith Warrior. It is the only class in which I find it easy to replay and enjoy the heck out of. It is also the only class that's actually worth replaying it, in my opinion, due to it having a high caliber of writing. But in addition to that, one of the things that I'm going to talk about is that you have so much control over your character and your actions. Before we get ahead, if you do like the video, consider subscribing, leaving a like or a comment. I would really appreciate it. Also, if you're a fan of Star Wars, don't worry, this is the right channel for you, as I have plenty more Star Wars related videos to put out. So hopefully I will see you there. With that aside, let's dive into the pinnacle Star Wars the Old Republic. One more thing. Spoiler! This will contain spoilers for the Sith Warrior story, so you have been warned. Well, to start, one of the things that I noticed particularly in the Sith Warrior is how much dominion you have over your character choices and how events transpire. In other class stories, don't get me wrong, you have a few moments there and there where you get to really choose how things play out, but that's far more prevalent in the Sith Warrior. I mean, come on. You literally get to decide the fate of the very first person or teacher. Of course, that person is Overseer Tremel, who greeted you when you start the game and got off the shuttle. Despite everything he did to get you initiated in the Sith Academy, the game still allowed you to decide his fate, and that set the precedent for the Sith Warrior saga. As someone who's supposed to live up to the embodiment of what a Sith is, you really do feel like the whole galaxy is just made of cardboard, considering how destructive your character can be and the amount of choices you have when it comes to deciding how things play out. This is just, I can't think of any other way. And this part of the game has a perfect excuse for you running errands, that being that you're a newly admitted Sith acolyte, so it makes sense that you are being constantly tested. Obviously, having later working as Baras' apprentice and enforcer, you're tasked with carrying out a lot of his missions, but even with him, you get to be defiant. And regardless of having to do those missions, you solely decide how everything eventually concludes, and Baras will never find out about them unless you tell him, of course. Letting the players have this kind of influence over the story is one of the things that drive this class towards the top of the list. Of course, that level of control alone can take all the credits, because we have to talk about arguably one of the best, if not the best ranked characters in the game, Darth Baras. Baras is such a great character. Before you even met him, Overseer Tremel had already described him as a serious and deceptive Sith Lord. And oh man, is that such an accurate description of him, because this dude will do everything in his power to tell you only what you need to know and leave the pivotal details out, so nothing would cloud your judgment and actions. And while I understand that that's a typical nature of a Sith, I can't think of any other character that embodied this better than Baras. His every words and tactics prove this. The interaction between the Sith Warrior and Baras is a perfect exemplification of the dynamic between a Sith Master and Apprentice. Because you have to keep in mind, throughout the entire Sith storyline, both the Sith Warrior and Darth Baras are driven by their ambitions for power and dominance within the Sith hierarchy. Baras sees the warrior or the player as a tool to further his own goals, not only to intimidate his rivals and eliminate his enemies as he stated, but also to seize control of the empire to where he has the loudest voice. On the other hand, you as a player get the opportunity to prove yourself as a formidable Sith in your own right by carrying out a lot of these tasks. As a result, not only do you gain recognition in the Sith Empire and Republic, but also fear and power. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the warrior uses Baras as essentially some sort of a VIP pass to do basically whatever he wants to rise in the Sith Empire. Since Baras himself is Darth, as long as the warrior accomplishes these missions, well, he basically gets to do whatever he wants, regardless if we're talking about an ally or an enemy. While Baras initially sees the Sith warrior as a means to further his own ambitions, playing as a warrior you have plethora of ways to bypass and even extend yourself beyond just being a mere pawn in Baras' schemes. Of course, one of the earlier defiance being that you can either choose to let the Overseer live or die when Baras orders you to kill him. Now, if you do spare him, then he'll appear right before the finale to witness Baras' end. Now, another instance is Lord Rothari, who Baras also tasked you with destroying, but that's ultimately up to you to decide, and he too appear in the end if you let him live. And these are just minute examples. There are plenty more I can list out, but that will also take quite a bit of time, but you get the idea. This is one of the reasons why this class story is so good and versatile, because you have so much control and influence over your own character and actions despite having to carry out Baras' tasks. There's just a lot more complexity involved than what you initially see. It isn't like many other class or expansion story in which you're limited to only few moments of actual impact in the main story. Quite the contrary. This leads to the next subject, and that is the battle between the dark and light within the Sith warrior. There is no other class story in which you feel such a difference and contrast in the character and alignment than the Sith, because again, you have so much command over your decision that a light and dark Sith warrior feels like two completely different people. I started my first character in Star Wars: The Republic as a light-sided Sith warrior, and then later re-rolled my combat style while also playing a dark side, and I gotta tell you, the replayability of the Sith warrior is just far superior to other classes, and I almost didn't even recognize my character when I chose the dark side. It's such a masterful writing for an MMO that you gotta give credits to the people behind the core game. As the story progresses and you gain more prominence and power, it becomes clear that you and Baras will fall in line of the Sith Ascension, meaning it was only a matter of time before you overthrow Baras and surpass him. And of course, as perceptive as Baras is, he isn't blind to this fate, and that's when the tension grows between the two of you, and you realize the relationship between a Sith master and apprentice is inherently unstable, and it is bound to lead into one eliminating the other, as both individuals are driven by their own desire for dominance, as I mentioned before. Baras, feeling that you have become far too powerful and ambitious, seeks to now eradicate you as he sees you as a threat to his ascendancy as the voice of the Emperor. And even in the betrayal chapter of the story, the Sith warrior just outdid all others. A perfect comparison is the Sith Inquisitor, in which you were betrayed by Zash. That was one of the most obvious and expected turn of events. There were so many things that made her betrayal so easy to spot, from the ghost of Kalik, your ancestor, warning you, to her taking you to a creepy temple of all things, and then eventually saying out loud herself. But what made Baras' betrayal so unexpected was where and when it happened. You just finished defeating Baras' master, Darth Vengeance, and rescue Lord Drag. It seems like all is going well, and Baras had already secured his place in the Dark Council, which is what he wanted, so why would he even attempt to get rid of you, considering the Sith warrior is still just a Sith Lord at the end of the day, while he sits among the Dark Council member. On top of that, the betrayal happened in Quest during a random nothing burger mission where you were supposed to stop a Republic interfering with a mining operation or some crap. Like, who cares about this mission, right? And then boom, you get a call from Lord Drag informing you that Baras is now conspiring against you and wants you dead, which led to a bomb explosion that was planted in the mine. And all of that was just not what you typically expect. I expected something grandiose or in the midst of a breaking point in the story, but this was literally just a random mission. And with Baras' betrayal, it leads to the birth and revenge of the Wrath. Plotting against Baras and fighting him in front of the Dark Council members in German cause, it all just comes full circle, doesn't it? Although I will say Baras was a bit way too easy for a final boss in the story. I didn't even break a sweat. Despite that, to finally defeat him and see his end is such a great ending to the best story in the game, and I love the way you killed Baras. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't flashy, and it wasn't over the top. You literally just lean close to him and just ignite your lightsaber into his heart, and so the false voice of the Emperor fall and begin the rise of the Sith Wrath, and the game ends right there. In my opinion, it ends right there. Everything else is just a dream, but really that ending is so good and a perfect conclusion to the Sith warrior, as he is now known as the Wrath of the Empire. With that being said, if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, leaving a comment or like or all, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Until then, catch you later.